Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
And we're alive.
And we are not dead. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what alive means, Dylan.
And we've been missing in action. We got so much stuff going on. It has kept us from podcasting. It's kept Heather from developing the stories.
Yeah, we won't go too much into it, but this past week has been very stressful, very busy. I feel like we've hardly seen each other, and I've not had a moment to catch my breath. You really haven't either.
It's true. It's true. I will tell in a nutshell, I have added my dream job to my repertoire of things I need to do, as well as putting fence up and welding gates and podcasting, and I beat people up for money.
Your dream job, were you hired to be a professional sitter and looker?
Oh yeah, I'm a professional. Yeah, sassy boy. Yeah, I work at Sassy Boy Incorporated.
Okay.
No, I'm working in the kitchen. I've always dreamed of cooking, learning more about food and how to actually make sauces, do the real stuff.
Chef Dylan.
No, I'm a line cook.
Line cook Dylan.
And but I got to say, I love it. And but I also have to say my hat goes off to anyone in the service industry, in the kitchen or the front of the house. Everyone works so very hard to make sure people can enjoy their meal. And
so be nice.
I never realized.
Be nice to the host. Be nice to the server, the bartender. Be nice.
It's hard work, folks. It is really hard work.
I've been telling you that.
Heather, what have you been doing?
Working my arse off.
Oh, my gosh.
Dude, I walked 4.4 miles in 4 hours at work today. That's all I'm saying.
We got to tell people what you're doing now.
Nobody needs to know what I'm doing.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay?
Okay, she's that girl that hands out cups at marathons of water and Gatorade.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. I don't think those people are paid. That's a volunteer position, Dylan. But thank you. Yes, I'm handing out waters and Gatorades. Makes sense.
At marathons. We have no time to waste. We know y'all have waited long enough. Let's dive straight into
Well,
the story.
Dylan, I'm going to preface this by saying the last cases that we've covered have been pretty heavy. We've had the Todd Ice case, the Jeremy Gibson, and then we talked about the Robin Benedict murder. All heavy cases. Today, I thought we might lighten up just a little bit. We're still talking true crime.
I agree.
But this is more of a loosey-goosey episode for us.
I agree. We have had some pretty rough episodes in a row, so I think it's time to cleanse our palate.
But this one has everything, Dylan.
Noise.
It has intrigue. It has crime. It has the paranormal.
Now, before Heather dives into her juicy story she has for us, I'd like to thank today's sponsor of the show, Heather.
All the best people are named Heather.
It's the other Heather is our newest patron, and thank you so much for subscribing over there on Patreon.com.
Heather's awesome. She's been a follower on Instagram. She follows Mountain Murders on Instagram, which you can follow us too at Appalachian True Crime. And she's always been a big supporter over there. So I'm happy to welcome her to the Patreon family. Thanks so much, Heather.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoy all the bonus content. Dylan, are you ready?
I cannot wait.
I remember back in the day, I don't know why, but I was thinking about this when I say, are you ready? It always pops in my head. Back in like the 80s, there was a commercial and it was like, are you ready for some football? Like Monday Night Football.
Well, yeah.
And it was Hank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the opening.
Yeah.
Hank Jr.
And it like pops every time I go, are you ready? I'm thinking of are you ready for some football? Anyway.
And then he got canceled or something. I don't know. Something happened.
Hank Jr. got canceled?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like in this day and age, everybody gets canceled at least twice, so it's fine.
It's true. It's going to happen to you sooner or later.
Yeah. I mean, if you have an opinion about anything, someone's going to cancel you, right?
Well, let's just cancel that and let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dylan, ready? Are you
I'm
ready?
ready.
Okay.
I'm so
You
ready.
buckled in, you strapped in, you ready?
I got my harness on.
Now, if I skip around a little bit, just keep in mind it's all gonna make sense, right? In the summer of 1965, the Defeo family moved into an upscale home located at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, New York, a village within the town of Babylon.
I would love to live in Babylon.
Me too. And then people could be like, she's the whore of Babylon.
I bet they got a great nightlife in Babylon.
I bet they
You
don't.
know, like temples and shit.
It sounds almost like a little sleepy coastal town. The Defeos, Ronald Sr., people called him Big Ronnie,
Wow.
and Louise, his wife, she was a former model. They had 4 children with a 5th on the way, so they certainly needed more room. They left their cramped Brooklyn apartment and moved into this gorgeous home. Ronnie, Big Ronnie, worked at a Buick car dealership owned by his wife's parents, and he knew that money would be tight if they purchased such a fine home. Now, it's been reported that Big Ron didn't necessarily get along with his in-laws, but he was more than willing to accept their help when it came to purchasing this house.
Well,
You
yeah.
know what? And if I was moving into some beautiful home, I might smile and eat shit too if someone else was helping foot the bill.
So you would deal with all their bullshit.
I would pucker up like the best with the rest of them. I could do the best pucker job you've ever seen. I'll kiss some ass.
Alrighty then. It's good.
If anybody out there wants to buy me a house, I will be your ass kisser.
It's good to know you have no moral standards.
I don't. No, I don't have a problem with that. Now, according to deeds and information compiled by the Amityville Historical Society, the Ocean Avenue property had once been farmland belonging to the Ireland family, one of Amityville's most prominent and influential families. On January 14th of 1924, Annie Ireland sold the property to John and Catherine Moynihan. The following year, Amityville builder Jesse Purdy constructed the large Dutch colonial that still stands there today. While their new home was being built, the Moynihans relocated to an old house down the street. And when the house was finished, their family of 6 moved back in and enjoyed living along the Amityville Creek. When John and Catherine Moynihan died, their daughter, Eileen Fitzgerald, moved in with her own family. She lived there until October 17th of 1960, and that's when John and Mary Riley bought the house. Because of marital problems, their marriage ended in divorce, the property was sold to the Defeos on June 28th of 1965. So that's a brief history of the home. And that might be important to know.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
The 3-story house was considered a Dutch colonial with architecture that was large and popular at the time, including 2 windows that stood over the lawn. And they will become an iconic image after our story ends.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think everyone, even if you don't directly know about Amityville, why can't I say it?
I don't know.
The Amityville, the Amityville Horror. Even if you don't know all the details, you know of it. It's part of pop culture.
Houses with window eyes are pretty creepy, in my opinion.
I agree.
It's,
yeah.
I mean, if a house has those window eyes, it automatically, in my mind, becomes the perfect haunted house. Right? The house also had a swimming pool and a boathouse as it was located on the water. I mean, so this is a dream house indeed.
It's a beautiful home. I mean, if you minus the story and what occurred at the home, I think everyone would be like, wow, that's a nice home. I'd like to live there.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Defeos. They welcomed their first son, Ronald Jr., also known as Butch, on September 26th of 1951. He was born in Brooklyn, New York at the Adelphi Hospital. Butch was an overweight little boy who was frequently teased by his classmates. Kids can be so fucking cruel, Dylan. They used to call him Pork Chop.
Okay. That's not okay. That's not cool.
No.
No, I wouldn't mind being called Pork Chop personally, because
You love a good pork chop.
I love a good pork chop. But, kids just keep on and on and on with their teasing, and sometimes, and it's just a lot. It's just cruel. It's cruel. There's no way around it.
Yeah, I was never teased about my weight by kids, but my dad called me Miss Piggy my whole life. And then when I was a teenager, I developed an eating disorder. So thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, well, but that's pretty cruel, pork chop. I mean, come on. Weight is not something that like most kids can control. They're not controlling their diet. I mean, anyway, that's just an asshole thing to do. Nobody likes a bully. So it has been reported that Big Ronnie was a domineering authority figure who often engaged in hot-tempered fights with his wife and children, including Little Ron, Little Butch.
So Big Ron flips out and goes off on everybody.
Yeah, from the outside, they appeared to be a nice, normal family. Yet Big Ronnie terrorized his wife and kids. Then he would use money and material gifts to smooth things over. And when I say that Big Ronnie terrorized his wife and kids, he was abusive. He was a fucking asshole. Let's just say it. He was an abusive asshole.
But
physically, verbally, emotionally, every way that he could be abusive. Now, as far as I know, he did not sexually abuse his children, but he was abusive in like every other way.
Well, I mean, that's good. Obviously, there's no reports of sexual misconduct, but I just don't understand people that live their lives like this, that want to, they've got to know that they have a short temper or they have anger issues of some type, and that they're just constantly railing on their family and, family members. I just don't get it.
Yeah, this was a family just rife with domestic violence. Michael Brigante, Louise's father, so this would be Big Ronnie's father-in-law. He's the one that owns the Buick dealership. He had given them $50,000 to buy the house and also money to have life-size oil portraits painted of the family when they moved in.
Well, that's a must when you move.
It has been rumored that Brigante and Defeo might have been mafia associates. Rumored, but Brigante was involved with the Gambino crime family.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's the big boys.
It has been said that for all the flash and luxury that Big Ronnie showed off, he actually earned very little himself. He was basically kept afloat by his in-laws.
That he doesn't get along with.
Which explains maybe why he doesn't get along with them. Maybe he's dependent on them for money, or they look at him like he's kind of a piece of shit because they have to give him money to take care of his family because he's not.
Well, you know how that goes sometimes. Somebody, they'll be like, oh, yeah, we'll help you out. But then they have their little digs or they say their little things that kind of, poke at you about it. I wouldn't be that comfortable accepting large amounts of money.
You would not.
Or
I wouldn't be, well, I jokingly say that, but I wouldn't be comfortable accepting because there's always strings attached.
Well, that's the thing. Now you're beholden to them.
By his teenage years, Butch had lost a lot of weight due to his use of amphetamines.
Wow, that's a very popular diet plan back then.
He also began experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Up until Butch was regularly using heroin, LSD, and speed.
My God.
As a teenager.
What a rough drug cocktail that is.
As Butch matured, he began lashing out physically against his father, as well as a few friends. His family took him to a psychiatric facility to have him evaluated, but the visits didn't sit very well with Butch. He denied that he needed help.
Okay, well, that's not for you to say. You're kind of freaking out and doing a lot of bad things. So let's just let the professionals decide, right?
Well, about a year before our crime takes place, Butch's parents got him to go to a psychiatrist. The doctor informed them that if they failed to commit their son to a treatment facility, he would kill them.
So that was the doctor's opinion?
Yes.
That if he doesn't get help, he's going to hurt someone.
Now, Dylan, if a doctor told you this, you need to get your child help. Your child is dangerous and is a threat to you and will kill you. What's your next step?
Well, for one, I would fight my kid right then in front of the doctor to let him know that I can take him and that I'm going to be okay. That would be my first move. No, the real answer is I would be,
What?
yeah, I'll be like, let's go. Oh, you think he can kill me? Well, how about pow? Hit him right in the throat. Pow, kid drops. Be like, he ain't going to get me, doc. I'll fuck that kid up. The real answer is I would be very concerned. I would be
Well,
beside.
I think most parents would be very concerned.
I'd be beside myself, and I would maybe want to seek a second opinion just to make sure that we're on the same page with the doctors. But I would see what the next step and what's available. To start maybe getting therapy started at least.
Butch had actually threatened his family for a long time that he would kill them, threaten to harm them.
See, that doesn't sit well with me. People making threats of violence, or like, I'll burn your house down with you in it, or I'll kill you when you're sleeping. Even if it's my child, I would be. That's not going to be okay. Something's got to be done.
He and his father continually got into these physical rows with each other. I mean, fist fights, brutal fist fights. Once Butch pulled a gun on Big Ronnie after he had abused Louise, his wife. The boy pulled the trigger on a 12 gauge at point blank range, but the gun didn't fire, and that's what saved his father's life.
Oh my gosh.
Butch's erratic behavior didn't stop there. Once on a hunting trip, Butch threatened a friend with a rifle, then acted later on like the incident never happened.
Is that called gaslighting?
Or just like his moods switch on a dime. Like 1 minute he's pointing a gun at you, threatening you, and then 5 minutes later, it's like he doesn't even know what he did.
And he's wondering why you're mad.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be disturbing for sure.
Yeah, I would say so. And though Butch was technically on the payroll at the family auto dealership, he was mostly drinking and doing drugs. He got into fights. He argued with his parents. Butch rarely showed up for work, but somehow collected a paycheck and also managed to get an allowance from his parents.
See, that's the kind of job I need, where you don't even have to show up and you still get paid.
Well, instead of further seeking treatment for Butch, his parents opted to spend large amounts of money on him. If they could appease him with gifts and cash, maybe they would placate Butch. This included buying him a $14,000 speedboat.
Every troubled kid needs a speedboat.
You should invest in a speedboat, not mental health care.
I know you're having trouble relating to people, making friends, but here's a cigar boat.
I know you keep pulling a gun on me, but you know what? I got you a boat. Now go skiing, son. This tactic did very little to smooth things over. I mean, Butch is continuously using drugs.
Well, he's not having any accountability.
And he's mixing heroin, LSD, speed. I mean, this is not a good combination, right? And by the time he was 17, Butch was expelled from school for violent outbursts. But none of that mattered because he was given that position at the car dealership. So there's no accountability or, hey, here's a consequence to your action.
Yeah,
Instead of being like, well, you dropped out, now you have to go work a menial job or, you have to get a GED or something. They're like, here, have a sweet job at the car dealership and we're going to pay you tons of money. Oh, and here's an allowance to go on top of that.
And you don't even have to come.
You don't even have to show up.
And you're like vice president of South American operations or something.
Yeah.
For the one Buick dealership.
His money was pumped into flashy new cars and also drugs and alcohol. Some question why 23-year-old Butch didn't just leave home. Because by the time our story takes place, he's 23. And some reports say he did try to move out and live on his own. However, he was always coerced to return by Big Ronnie with promises of money or whatever new toy he wanted. So Big Ronnie's always dangling that carrot at his son. And his son's not strong enough to say no.
But like, I got you a monster truck if you just come home.
The Redeemer?
Yeah, the
I've
Redeemer.
been watching too much of the Righteous Gemstones.
Well, it's this environment for someone who's wired like Butch, an addict, obviously, selfish addict. This is the worst kind of environment for him. I feel bad for people that have enablers around them when they're dealing with substance abuse issues and things like that, or behavioral issues or anything like that, because you're just never going to decide to make a change or be forced to make a change or even have some self-reflection. people keep covering it up. They buy your way out. They, keep giving you stuff. And why would you change? You have no reason to change, right? And that's dangerous.
I think you're absolutely right, Dylan.
Because drugs are not good for you, no matter what people tell you.
It has been said that despite the relationship that Butch had with his father, he and Louise were quite close. Louise was a victim of abuse herself. I mean, she was being beaten regularly by her husband.
I just don't know why you stay with somebody and want to, not her, but like Big Ron. Why would you want to stay with someone that you beat on? And how are you going to beat on a woman, for one, your wife? Run around screaming, raising hell, scaring your kids. Who knows? He may, been physically abusive.
He was physically abusive with the kids.
It's just, those are supposed to be the people closest to you that you protect as a father, as a, an adult. I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right, Dylan. I can't wrap my head around why people are like this.
No, I've never understood. Obviously, you're mad and sad and hate everything around you.
This is the other side of it. Just a sidetrack note here. And I'm going to just say men, but I mean, there are women who are violent and abusive as well. But just from my own personal experience, because I grew up in hell, is that when you live in these domestic violence situations, the abuser, I mean, they treat you like shit, right? And they abuse you, and it's terrible. But then when you do leave, they stalk you.
Yeah.
I mean, and then these women or these victims of domestic violence are often murdered by their intimate partner after leaving.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've been abused. And that's the part that doesn't make any sense to me is I'm like, when you're with this person, you beat the shit out of them. You treated them like crap.
Act like you hate them.
You're horrible. You give them every reason to leave. And then you stalk them and make threats because they left you.
Well, yeah.
I mean, we know it's a control thing. And,
obviously.
Yeah.
And they're always insecure people. Inwardly, they're very, very insecure. And they're, I don't know, you're a piece of shit if you do that, male or female. I'm sorry.
There were rumblings of trouble all along, but things really seemed to get out of hand in 1974. Butch was feeling irritated by what he believed was an unfair wage given to him by his family. He plotted ways to embezzle money from the car dealership. In late October, the dealership entrusted him with the responsibility of depositing more than $20,000 to the bank.
So he wants to get more money for the job he doesn't show up at.
Yeah, makes sense.
It makes sense. And this is totally the first guy I would go to because he's been so responsible up to now. And make sure that he's the one who handles large amounts of cash and makes deposits for us. Makes total sense.
Yeah, I would make this guy my CFO.
Definitely your CFO.
Butch planned a staged robbery with a friend, agreeing to split the money evenly with his accomplice. The plan went off without a hitch until police came to the dealership to question him. Instead of calmly answering the officers' questions, Butch Defeo exploded into rage. When police, suspicious that Butch was lying, asked him to come into the station to check out some mugshots of possible suspects, he refused to comply. Makes sense, huh?
Well,
This is definitely the reaction an innocent person would have.
Well, yeah, you got to play it cool. So when they come in there and start asking questions, you just start screaming, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I didn't get my friend to act like he robbed me, okay? I didn't do it."
Big Ronnie began to suspect that his son had committed the robbery. But when he questioned Butch about his lack of cooperation with police, Butch threatened to kill his dad.
My God.
You ask me one more question, you old son of a bitch, I'm going to kill you.
This family certainly has...
I say that. They're like New Yorkers. So he's probably like, I'll fucking kill you, Dad.
Hey, I'm walking here.
Hey, forget about... The money's gone, forget about it. Right? Okay.
This family has such a deep-seated dysfunction.
They are very dysfunctional. In the early morning hours of November 13th, 1974, Butch acted on his threat. Using a .35 caliber Marlin .336 rifle from his gun collection, he entered his parents' bedroom and shot them both while they slept.
Yeah, that's scary to me. I'm sorry. That kind of threw me for a second. When you're asleep in your own home with your kids, of course, all this dysfunction and, resentment built up between them. But I think I don't think anyone ever thinks their child is capable of killing them. Do you?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Did you make a plan to kill your parents and just didn't get around to it?
Let's move along.
Yeah, let's move along.
No, I did not.
She didn't, folks. She did not.
But I probably should have. I mean, they're fucking terrible people. So, if anybody deserved it, they probably did. Now, he then entered his brother's 12-year-old Marc and 9-year-old John's bedroom, shooting them both in their beds. He ended by shooting his sisters, 18-year-old Dawn and 13-year-old Allison, point blank in their bedrooms. All the murders took place within 15 minutes. The children were all killed by single shots while the parents were given 2 blasts each. Physical evidence suggested that Louise Defeo and Allison were awake at the time of their deaths. According to Suffolk County law enforcement, the victims were all lying face down in the bed.
So you think he told them to lay down and basically executed them? Because we're going to talk about this, Dylan, but there is a lot of questions about if this narrative is what happened. Well, I'm going to say, even in a large home, a rifle, is going to make a loud noise. And after 3 or 4 rounds, you got to imagine there's no way his sisters weren't awake by the time he got to their room. You would think, right?
Well, what's really strange about this, Dylan? I was going to talk about this later, but I'll go ahead and bring it up. This is a loud gun.
Yeah.
From what I understand, this is a very loud gun. No one reported hearing a gunshot, not even neighbors.
So what, we're talking 5 members, 6 members? Yeah, 6 members of his family he's killed. And 6 gunshots, plus the parents got double up, so that could be upwards of 8 gunshots. And no one hears a thing.
No one hears a thing. And get this, Dylan, there was a DEA agent surveilling the Defeo household. Because, again,
of their connections to...
They could be mob associates.
Right.
So there was a DEA agent parked outside the home surveilling the house.
Well, how would he not hear the noise?
I'm not sure. But even if he did, he couldn't blow his cover, so he just didn't do anything.
Well, that's true. He may have heard something and just decided to stay in place, right?
Keep that thought in mind about the DEA agent, because I have something else to discuss later on about that. Okay, let's get back to the story. Butch then showered, dressed for work, and collected his bloody clothing and the murder weapon and stuffed it all in a pillowcase. He dumped the evidence in a storm drain on the way to work at the car dealership, and this was around 6 a.m. Upon arriving at work, Butch called home, pretending not to know why his father hadn't shown up for work. Saying he was bored around noon, Butch left work and spent the day hanging out with friends. He attempted to secure an alibi by telling each of the people he visited that day that he just couldn't seem to reach his family. Like, no one was at home, no one was answering the phone.
Man, I've tried to call my dad like 6 times, and I just can't get a hold of him. I'm starting to get worried.
At 6 p.m., Butch called a friend, acting surprised, saying that someone had broken into the house and shot his family.
Oftentimes when there's one surviving member, unless they know for a fact where they were, they often they suspect them of having done something. So, because it's kind of odd that everyone's dead except you.
Butch drove to a local dive bar, which seemed to be pretty close to the home, like maybe a mile and a half away from the house, and rounded up some friends in his car to return to the house and see what had happened. Once this group was at the family home, friends were like, we have to call the police.
Yeah.
So they called law enforcement.
You should have called the cops first.
When a Suffolk County detective questioned Butch Defeo about who could be a suspect in these murders, he told them he believed a mafia hitman named Louis Fellini may have been responsible. Butch cited an old grudge between the made man and the family over some work that Butch did for him at the dealership.
Have you ever known anyone that might be in the mafia or have connections to made people?
Yes.
Really? Wow. We'll have to talk about that one day.
We can talk about it right now if you
Well,
want.
go ahead and tell us then, Heather.
Okay, now here's the deal.
Oh, my gosh.
My great uncle was married to a woman who was from a very large Italian family in Chicago, and they owned a chain of car washes,
Okay.
like 20 car washes.
That's a lot of car washes.
When my dad was young, like a teenager, he went, because this was like his favorite uncle, right? So my dad and my great uncle were very close. So my dad went on a trip with him to Chicago to visit her family. And my dad was like, whoa, they lived in like this, he said it was like The Godfather. Like they lived in this like palatial kind of home, you know, big gates, guards, men in suits guarding the doors and stuff. And as a teenager, my dad was like, yeah, I knew something was like not right. Like these people don't just own car washes or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's probably, they're probably laundering cash through the car washes.
Well, and I guess my great uncle had made some comments in passing about her family having associations or whatever. But I do know that because he left her, and you know, he left her for another woman. So it was quite scandalous.
Oh my God.
Also, this was like in the very early 80s, and he left her for an African-American woman,
Oh, wow.
which in this small town was like
A big deal.
very scandalous. And he got some threats.
Well, I'll say, come on down here, you son of a bitch. You better bring a big old can of whoop ass with you.
Well, someone told him, like, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be in a week, but we will get you at some point.
Oh my God.
Some years later, someone shot up his house.
They really waited that long and was like, let's do it.
I don't know. We don't know.
Well, I mean, if I was living that life and someone had threatened me like that, and I know that I'm doing something that's frowned upon because, I mean, obviously there's nothing wrong with it, but, you know, everybody around you thinks something's wrong with it. And then someone shoots my house up no matter how long after, I guess I would think it's connected as well.
So everyone on my dad's side of the family is convinced that she really did her family had mafia ties.
Okay.
Now, again, you know, people will run their mouths, whatever, who knows, but
This is pure speculation.
there's a very strong feeling that it's true.
I would make a good mobster, I think.
No, you wouldn't.
Why?
Well, one, you have horrible short-term memory.
So I'll forget that I killed somebody for you. You wouldn't have to pay me.
You would somebody would be like, "Here's the job at hand," and you would forget. And if you were like a thief or something, like I'm just thinking about like Goodfellas when they're doing like the Latanza heist, and the Samuel L. Jackson character like forgets to ditch the car and goes to the bar and gets drunk. That would be you.
You think so?
Yeah, I think you're too irresponsible to be associated with organized crime.
So what you're saying, if I did worm my way in there, I wouldn't last long before they killed me because I forgot to do something.
Yeah, I don't even think you could be a driver.
I can drive good, though.
You're a terrible driver.
That's not true.
It is very true.
You're a shitty passenger. What can I say?
Yeah, because you scare the shit out of me.
That's when I'm driving
That's
normal.
why I'm a shitty passenger, because I'm shitting myself every time you drive because you're such a bad driver.
I'm a good driver,
This is
but
a terrible
let's
driver.
move it along.
Yeah, okay.
Move
You
on.
Scared the shit out of everybody.
The listeners know the truth.
So anyway, that's my possible, I know somebody who knows somebody who knew somebody that might be in the mob.
And that's more than I
All
know.
right, there you go.
The only mobsters I ever knew came from TV.
Okay. So, okay, he's talking to police. He's blaming this mobster, this assassin, this hired henchman. Butch then tells police that he had been up late watching TV and was unable to sleep, so he left for work early. Now, Butch is not the type to get up and go to work at 6 a.m. As we've established, he's not really the type to show up for work at all.
I was going to say, he never goes to work.
He said he believed his family was alive when he left. Then he told police of his whereabouts for the rest of that day. Law enforcement placed Butch in protective custody as they searched for a suspect. They really bought the story that Fellini might be after him.
Well, I mean, once you give them a name and they run it and they see he has a jacket, you know, I'm sure criminal history and his connections and a especially if it's a successful car dealership, you can run a lot of money through one to launder it. So they may be thinking that might be the connection or the nature of the relationship between Butch's grandfather and these these connected people.
Well, Dylan, what I read was in my research, DeFeo. It's believed that Brigante and the DeFeos were possibly helping the mafia dispose of bodies.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, and that's another reason that you think they might retaliate against the family because they are members of the family and then end up killing everyone, because they know too much.
After an investigation began at the DeFeo home, detectives soon picked up on inconsistencies in Butch's story as they stumbled upon evidence. Like, for example, in Butch's basement bedroom, they found an empty box for a .35 caliber Marlin rifle recently purchased.
Oh my gosh.
Due to the family still being in bed wearing pajamas, police speculated the killings had taken place early in the morning, and according to Butch's alibi, that put him at home when the murders occurred. Again, this is the 70s. They don't have all of the highfalutin forensic technology that we have today.
No, they don't have everyone has a camera, they have all the various techniques in forensic science.
All the bells and whistles of DNA.
Well, and also their mentality is different. They think a certain way. They go after certain tips and stuff. They just view it in a different manner than they used to.
After 12 hours, which really isn't a very long interrogation when you think about it, Butch DeFeo caved.
He gave up the beans.
But this is only after
Or he spilled the beans.
his grandfather, Big Man Brigante, visited him at the jail.
Damn, you reckon he beat him up with a phone book?
No, but he visited him at where he's being held for interrogation. Grandpa shows up and is like, "Can I talk to my grandson?" They let him have a few words with him. And so a lot of people think that his grandfather was like, you're gonna go down for this.
You either own up to what you've done or you're gonna die. Someone's gonna kill you.
And we need to keep that in mind as well, that Grandpa shows up at the police station and has a conversation with him.
Okay.
Keep that in mind because I got something to tell you later. So after 12 hours, again, that's not a very long interrogation. We've seen people held for like 18 hours, whatever. Butch breaks down. He confesses to carrying out the murders himself. He told detectives, quote, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast."
That's not a good reason to kill your whole family, bud.
After his confession, Butch's 6-week trial focused primarily on why he carried out the murders, with Butch's court-appointed attorney, a man named William Weber, mounting an insanity defense. But it didn't quite work out for him. In 1992, Butch claimed that Weber had pursued the insanity defense against his wishes, and that he had done so to potentially drum up interest in possible book or film deals.
Well, that's not the right reason to be a lawyer. You're supposed to be there to help your client in however you can, not dream about marketing your story or books and movies.
DeFeo told the Times newspaper, quote, "William Weber gave me no choice. He told me I had to do this. He told me there would be a lot of money from book rights and a movie. He would have me out in a couple of years, and I would come into all that money. The whole thing was a con, except for the crime."
Oh, my gosh. So his lawyer was running some game on him, huh?
Michael Brigante Sr. hired Herman Race, a former New York City supervising police detective, to investigate the murders, like a private eye.
So it's basically like his Pinkerton, modern-day Pinkerton detectives.
Right. So Grandpa is like hiring a private eye. He's going to get to the bottom of this. Brigante had testified at trial that he did not feel that his grandson acted alone in the commission of the crime. Since Brigante hoped a seasoned detective like Race, would be able to help Butch out with this. What Race uncovered is shocking. According to his investigation, evidence showed there were multiple gunmen and at least 2 guns used during the commission of the murders. During a private court hearing and at trial, Race's findings were corroborated by the prosecutor and the medical examiner, who was astonished that one man said accused of being the sole gunman. A lot of people kind of, I guess, speculate or believe that the prosecutor, they were so gung-ho to arrest someone and try them from the crime
Right.
that they ignored other evidence and just focused solely on Butch to make a quick arrest and make everybody in the community feel happy and safe.
Well, I'm not saying that they did that, but we've seen stories where that's basically what they did. So, I mean, it's possible.
So a lot of my information came from a book. I'll give you my sources, but one of the books I read for this is called The Night the DeFeos Died by Rick Osuna. And during a November 30th, 2000 meeting with the author, Butch confessed that, along with his sister Dawn DeFeo, he and one of his friends actually committed the murders out of desperation. So Butch, his sister, and a friend, a trio, carried out the murders.
Will you come over later and help us kill our family? But then what'd he do? Double back and kill the sister that helped?
Okay, well, let's talk about this, Dylan. This is a pretty interesting admission. The fact was confirmed by a letter written by Butch DeFeo. In his own handwriting, Butch wrote, quote, "It was cold-blooded murder, period. No ghosts, no demons, just 3 people in which I was one."
What the hell, Butch?
The DeFeo household had been in a frenzied state during the evening of November 12th, 1974. Butch's father, according to Butch, this is Big Ronnie, routinely abused his family. After that evening's tirade had settled down, Butch, his 18-year-old sister Dawn, and 2 of Butch's friends proceeded to get high in the basement. Incensed that her father was preventing her from joining her boyfriend in Florida, and worn out from years of physical abuse, Dawn DeFeo approached her older brother about killing their parents.
So she
wants to run off to Florida
and she
with her
just couldn't
boyfriend.
take it anymore.
Yes. Butch initially refused. After a culmination of drugs, alcohol, and desperation over the next few hours, Butch finally gave in to Dawn's ghoulish request. Employing his 2 friends, Butch and Dawn left the safety of the family's basement and headed for their parents' bedroom on the 2nd floor. This was around 1 o'clock a.m. on November 13th, 1974. While one friend waited as a lookout, the other, with his Colt Python, followed Butch, who had armed himself with that .35 Marlin rifle.
See, a Colt Python, if I'm not mistaken, is like a big 45 caliber weapon. So, yet again, a loud gun.
Well, hence the name the Python.
Yeah, I'm going to squeeze you.
Yeah, it's like it's a big horny gun.
It's a big old horny snake, and I'm going to squeeze
It's a
you.
big horny gun. It's going to shoot you.
I'm
Bang,
gonna
bang.
I'm going to make you pass out. I'm going to squeeze you so hard, and then I'm going to eat you.
Ooh, bang, bang, daddy. Bang, bang. Okay.
And then you're going to be a turd. A snake turd.
Ooh, do snakes shit?
Yeah, I think they do like a chicken.
Just snakes just...
It all comes out like a cloaca.
They just shitted on them?
Like I just shitted on them. No, I just slithered on them. That's what they do. I just slithered on them.
I feel like I need to look up a video of a snake taking a dump on YouTube or something.
I think they do it all out of one hole, is what I'm saying, like a chicken.
Okay.
Like a cloaca.
I think wouldn't
called.
life just be so easy if you just had the one hole?
I think so.
Just, like, it was an in and out?
Well, you only
Like
got
an In-N-Out burger, but it was like you ate the food and then it came out the same hole?
Well, think about it. You only got to maintain one hole so that you've saved 2/3. You know, if there's 3 holes to maintain, depending on who you are and what you're working with.
You might have multiple holes because you got your ears, you got nose hole. I mean, come on, Dylan.
Well, yeah. You do have those holes, Heather. That's how you breathe in here. It's a good point.
A votive candle burning on Ronnie Sr.'s dresser. They had the 2nd floor bathroom light on, and also a military-style flashlight was used to sneak up into like up on these people who were sleeping.
Okay, so they're using like the red light where it's obvious, it's harder to see in the dark. Snakes actually have a cloaca. I was dead right.
Yeah, the flashlight was recovered by police. They found it on a brown recliner in the hallway outside of the master bedroom. So these were their only light sources. So they're like slinking around in the dark, cowardly, murdering their family.
Well, I mean, Big Ron was a dick. I mean, if you can't take it anymore from an abuser,
Then just leave.
Well, for one, you should leave.
Quit taking his money and leave.
Well, you should leave, obviously. But then if you do lash out, and it's just, I'm not telling you to do it, but I just don't understand why you killed the whole family, I guess is what I'm saying. Because what did they do to you? They're living the same life you are with him.
The parents were attacked while they lay in bed. Big Ronnie was able to struggle to his feet, it seems, to attempt maybe like a counterattack on the perpetrators. A second bullet struck him dead before he was able to reach whoever it was, whether it was Butch or a friend.
His attacker. Okay.
Louise Defeo lay in bed, moaning for help as she slowly bled to death. A second bullet silenced the woman for good. And although the original plan called for the younger children to be taken to the grandparents' house in Brooklyn, Dawn, according to Butch, killed them to eliminate the children as witnesses and potential threats. Butch claimed he was not in the house at the time of the children's murder. He was actually, one of his friends freaked out and took off running. And he was actually chasing his friend who had ran outside, like chasing him down. Like, hey, what's going on? Come back in.
What? How do you bring friends along for something like this, dude, to exterminate your family?
So his friend has fled the scene. Butch is chasing him down. He was trying to get him to come back in the house and I need you to come back. I need you to help with the cleanup. Stay strong, man. I can't have you freaking out on me.
No, dude.
Giving him the pep talk. We just committed a murder, man. You got to come help me clean it up.
We're all in this together.
I'm sure something like that was said.
I thought we were going to smoke pot and play Scrabble, bro. You're killing your family.
Well, even while feigning insanity at trial, Butch Defeo has never admitted to shooting the children.
So he claims that killing the children was never his idea, and he was not present when they were murdered.
Right. He says, so he's outside dealing with the friend, and that Dawn's in the house, and she has a gun, and she's the one that goes to her brother's rooms, callously ordered the boys face down. A clue that the Defeos were awake at the time of the murders rested in the final position of Marc Defeo's body. Because Marc had suffered a debilitating injury from football, he had been forced to sleep on his back. He was actually he had a wheelchair that was beside the bed that he had been using due to this injury. And so he had to sleep on his back. Yet he was shot face down in the bed. The prosecutor confirmed this fact at the trial. So somebody ordered him to flip over, right? Because that was not how he would sleep. The next room Dawn entered was Allison's. Standing at the doorway, Dawn raised the rifle, taking aim as Allison slightly raised her head before looking into the muzzle flash. From what I gather, just from research, Allison's death was instantaneous. The bullet impacted her left cheek and exited her right ear. Her wounds seemed like they were meant to disfigure her.
Oh my gosh. That's terrible. That really is.
Butch confronted Dawn in her third floor bedroom. So Butch claims that once he found out she had killed the kids, he flipped out. He was like, this was not part of the plan. What'd you do? And he says he just lost it when he realized what she had done. So after fighting for the gun, Butch tossed Dawn against the bed, which knocked her out. As she lay unconscious on her bed, Butch placed the back of the rifle to Dawn's head and fired. And that's when the murders were finally finished.
Jeez Louise.
Butch Defeo blamed the entire crime on his sister, even though the evidence clearly supports Butch's involvement. Nevertheless, evidence also supports the claims that more than one gun and killer were involved in the Defeo murders. A post-mortem examination of Dawn revealed there were unburned powders on her nightgown, which backed up the story that she was involved.
Well, I've very seldom do I believe when the assailant is the only one alive and they're out for their own self-interest. I seldom believe their version of the story. Sometimes I think you get the truth, what really happened. But I think a guy like Butch, I just don't believe he's going to come clean and own up to everything and his part in it.
So even if this evidence supports that his sister was involved, you don't believe that? I'm confused. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, the evidence may. I mean, it's not a smoking gun. It doesn't seem to be, direct or obvious evidence. Maybe they're taking things that could be something else and fitting it into the narrative. I don't know. But I mean, the fact he's distancing himself from the murder of the children, for instance, I think he's doing that on purpose.
Butch Defeo was found guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. He died in state medical care in Albany, New York in 2021 after serving time at Sullivan Correctional Facility, which is in Fallsburg, New York.
Good for him.
Okay, so let's get into what happens next.
Okay, so here you've had a family completely wiped out by one of its own members. They're off in jail, so the house is completely empty and available again. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, let's get back to this. There has been some theories circulating that perhaps Butch and Dawn had an incestuous relationship.
Okay.
And that Grandpa Brigante knew what was happening, and he paid Butch a visit at the jail, or when he was being interviewed, and was like, "You're going to take the rap for this, and you're not going to bring any more shame to the family about what was going on."
Now, do you think someone like Butch would react or do what he's being told there in a situation like that?
I don't know, because Brigante, I mean, he might have been a scary guy.
Well, his last name is scary. I was like, oh my gosh.
He's in the mafia, right? I don't know.
It could be.
I'm just throwing it out there, Dylan.
So, or if you don't do that, take responsibility. I'll tell everyone that you're having an incestuous relationship with your sister. I'll be like, go ahead and tell them. I love her and I want to marry her.
Oh.
Yeah, it's my sister. We're really close.
Jeez.
We sleep in the same bed.
Okay.
We've had kids.
Oh.
They live under the house.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, fast forward. George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house 13 months later, in December of 1975. The house was still furnished with the Defeo's furniture.
That's weird. I don't know. You'll see little tiny apartments and stuff. They're furnished, and I don't really like that.
You would not move into a furnished place, is what you're saying?
Well, I guess if I had to, maybe, or if it was really groovy, maybe, but I would have to clean.
Yeah, I'm kind of weirded out by other people's stuff. I don't want to sleep in somebody else's bed.
Well, no, that's why I don't care for, honestly, I don't care for motels or Airbnbs.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I will stay in one, but...
Well, yeah, I'll stay in one, but I'm almost certain that everything is covered in sperm inside.
I always bring my own bedding with me.
Yeah, as soon as we get there, I think a lot of people do that. We roll that bedding down off, might leave the, under sheet, the fitted sheet, and use our own pillows and covers.
Yeah, I bring my own comforter and stuff.
Because I know for a fact them comforters don't get washed that often.
Ew, no, they're gross.
Don't touch the remote.
I can't even. The house was still furnished, as I mentioned. And George and Kathy say they had a conversation with their kids about the house, that they were upfront and honest about what had happened there.
Well, and you should be.
We're going to get a great deal on this house, but this happened. Do we think as a family unit we can live in this house knowing what happened there?
It's a murder house.
And they all agreed they thought it would be fine. Now, according to the Lutzes, they called a Catholic priest named Father Pecoraro. I don't know.
I'm sure it's Pecoraro.
Pecoraro. I don't know. They called him to bless the house, having, knowing what had happened there. While the Lutzes unloaded their rented moving van, the Catholic priest entered the house and began his ritual blessing alone. He made his way upstairs to the second floor and entered the northeast bedroom, which had been Marc and John Defeo's room. As he sprinkled holy water around the room and prayed, the priest allegedly heard a loud male voice say, "Get out!"
I'd be like, okay.
Although the priest supposedly did not tell the family about the voice, he warned them about the room, saying, quote, "Don't use it as a bedroom. Don't let anyone sleep in there." And like I said, we're maybe jumping around a little bit, but it's all going to make sense. Now, according to a Good Housekeeping article dated April of 1977, the Lutzes followed the priest's advice, turning the room into a sewing room. Following his visit to the house, Father Pecoraro,
Just say the priest.
Father P.
Yeah.
I'll call him Father P.
Ooh, yeah. It's not good. No, I don't think that would work.
Allegedly developed a high fever and blisters on his hands, similar to stigmata.
Ooh, so almost in like the nail marks through Jesus's hands, right? Except his is just itchy because it's a rash.
It's blistery.
It's blistery.
During their stay at the Defeo home, the Lutzes reported experiencing strange sensations. The family was terrorized by unexplained noises, moving objects, doors slamming shut, shadowy figures, and physical manipulations. After a few days, the dramatic escalation of poltergeist activity began. The Lutzes claimed to see demonic entities. George experienced a swirling mass with glowing eyes.
And everybody's butthole tingled, which was probably the scariest part of the entire situation. Tingly butts.
Well, I never read about that.
Yeah, it's true.
Can you cite your source, please?
Well, I heard that because I oftentimes sit around discussing Amityville with people. I mean, it's just one of my hobbies. But,
Well, I would, if that were true, I feel like you might have more insight into the case, but it's you, so probably not.
At first, when your butthole tingles, it's going to be it's going to be new.
Okay, I'm turning you off now.
Okay,
we're going to unplug your mic.
Let's keep it moving.
Shadowy figures created a sense of dread and terror, and each family member reportedly experienced horrible nightmares. Sometimes scratches and bruises appeared with no explanation. Then, on January 14th of 1976, George and Kathy Lutz, along with their 3 children and their dog Harry, left 112 Ocean Avenue behind, leaving all of their possessions.
I could not deal with any of those situations. Any one of those events happens and I see it happen, I'm getting the hell out of there.
After only 28 days staying at the house called High Hopes, the family was done. They took the ghost's advice and they got the hell out of there, Dylan.
Get out.
Seeking answers, the Lutz family reached out to paranormal investigators and demonologists, Ed and Lorraine Warren.
We study demons on the weekends when we go down to the Home Depots.
Now let's discuss Ed and Lorraine a little bit here, Dylan. I'm sure that's a name you've heard. Ed Warren, Lorraine Warren. They're not unfamiliar to you. Is that correct?
Well, no. I know who they are. Yeah, they were the They were in those movies, right?
Conjuring.
The Conjurings. The Conjurings. I worked with the guys like, you seen that movie, The Conjurings? I was like, no. And he kept on like half a shift asking me, talking about this movie. I'm like, somebody finally was like, are you talking about The Conjuring? And he's like, yeah, that's it.
Oh, yeah, but people around here call it, you got conjured. You haven't heard that before?
You got conjured?
They don't say you've been conjured. They're like, you got conjured.
Won't you stop conjuring? That's a strange word, isn't it? Now that I've said it 4 times in a row.
Ed was born in September of 1926 and from a young age had a strong fascination with the paranormal after experiencing his own family's haunting. And I think that happens with a lot of people who are interested in paranormal activity, ghosts, people who are seeking explanations to this type of phenomena, is that they've grown up having experienced something
and it
strange and unusual.
So it kind of gives them maybe kind of a passion for it, or do they want to figure it out and get some answers maybe?
Well, of the folks that I've talked with, spoken with that are into ghost hunting, and then just hearing some of the big names in, the ghost world, they all seem to kind of have a personal experience that has led them down this road.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Now, Lorraine, she was born in December of 1927. She had psychic abilities.
I have psycho abilities.
She had grown up with psychic abilities. Now, they married in 1945 and founded NESPR.
That's the Northeast Specific Paranormal Extraction Research Facility.
That's not at all what that stands for,
That's
Dylan. The
an
acronym stands for the New England Society for Paranormal Research, and they founded this in 1952. The organization was dedicated to investigating and studying the supernatural. Working with NESPR helped legitimize the study of such subjects, and they were able to investigate a number of hauntings and demonic activity. The Warrens were involved in a lot of high-profile, highly publicized cases.
Well, I got to imagine there's not that many demonologists out there. So, they're going to stay busy.
I want to know how one becomes a demonologist.
Well, you got a minor in ass kickery because you got to be able to fight these monsters. No,
Okay.
Nobody.
So some of the high-profile cases, of course, Amityville, which we are discussing at present, the Enfield poltergeist, and the Annabelle doll case.
Oh, no.
And the Perron family's haunted house, which was the basis for that movie that you like so much, The Conjuring.
The Conjuring.
The Conjuring, whatever it's called.
So they've been in the news. People have talked about them. They've wrote about them. And every time there's like a big paranormal case that people are talking about, they seem to always be around or connected to it, right?
Sure. I don't agree with that statement, but okay. Moving along.
Oh,
You're
gosh.
trying to sidetrack me. The Lutz family, they contacted the Warrens, who conducted extensive research, collected evidence, and provided guidance to the family. When the Warrens arrived at High Hopes for the first time, they brought equipment and tools which were used to capture audio and visual evidence. Now, at first, the Warrens interviewed individual members of the Lutz household. Lorraine used her psychic abilities as a foundation for their investigation. Tapping into the spiritual realm, Lorraine was able to determine the property had malevolent spirits and demonic entities.
Oh, gosh.
Ed gathered evidence using audio recorders. These captured EVPs, the electronic voice phenomena, and they also were able to get some other documentation. Collaborating with other paranormal investigators, including a parapsychologist, demonologists, and members of the clergy, the Warrens wanted second opinions to back up their investigations. Their belief was the residual energy from the brutal Defeo murders had served as a catalyst for the hauntings. The Lutz happened to move into the house, which made them unintended targets. Widespread media attention, including the publishing of Jay Anson's book, The Amityville Horror, created controversy as many skeptics and critics questioned the validity of the Warrens' conclusions.
So they were kind of taken aback by what they were seeing, the evidence they were seeing of an actual haunting. Is that the way it seems?
Yes.
And they reached out to other experts and people in their field and people they knew.
Yeah, when they went to investigate, they brought in some other folks.
So they had like a team kind of.
They had like a team, and then they had other people kind of analyzing what they had found. Jay Anson's book became a bestseller, earning about $80 million.
Wow.
The film was released in 1979, and it sparked a pop culture phenomenon. The veracity of claims made in Anson's books were questioned, as he wrote his daughter had befriended a red-eyed pig named Jody.
Come on, man.
In the house. Some of the points that have been debunked in the book, and we're going to talk about this. So in this book, Jay Anson makes these claims that the Shinnecock Indians,
I've never heard of that
tribe, resided in Amityville, but that's not true. The tribe was nowhere near Long Island. The Montaukett Nation was on Long Island. Anson suggested that there was some type of Native American burial ground on this property, but there's no proof of this.
Damn, he's just pulling it out of his ass, ain't he?
There were also some theories that a witch named John Ketchum, who had been at Salem and had escaped from Salem and moved to Amityville,
That makes total sense if you think about it.
was haunting this property, this house. But the Ketchum family, there's been some extensive historical research, and though there were some Ketchums in this area, the family denies, of course, that John Ketchum was a witch.
Okay, well, yeah.
But of course, that sounds like something a witch's family would say.
That's totally what a witch's family would say.
But there's been no indication of any kind of cemetery or burial ground, anything like that on the property. In the book, Anson describes a red room as this gateway to hell. But it was actually just a small room underneath the stairway used to store the Defeo children's toys. And that room actually no longer exists due to renovations.
So it's either a gateway to hell or another dimension, or just under-stair storage. B.
Some say the Catholic Church is hiding evidence of these hauntings and of this demonic activity.
Well,
but
I would not be surprised.
But the diocese of this area has maintained that the Amityville Horror was a false report.
So the Catholic Church is saying that there was, as far as they know, there's no evidence of actual haunting or demon possession.
Yes. Father Picaro, the priest who supposedly came and blessed the house, in an affidavit, he said he only spoke to Kathy Lutz on the phone, that he never physically showed up at the house and did any kind of ritual blessing.
Well,
Yet, years later, he appeared on a TV show that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy.
Wow, I got to look this up.
And then told the story that he came in the house and there were tons of flies and he got stigmata and all the things we see in the movie, the Amityville Horror.
Now, do you think he's just chasing money at that point, and that he'll say anything as long as he gets paid?
Are you saying that there could be a corrupt priest out there?
Well, no, surely not.
I mean, come on, Dylan.
As soon as he drops his boyfriend off at daycare, then he goes down there and lies to Leonard Nimoy.
A woman named Geraldine Defeo claimed to be Butch's wife at the time of the murders. And she did seem to have intimate knowledge of the Brigante family. And she, around the time this book was being published and then in the years to follow, has kind of, came out with her story. And she's maintained a consistent story and supports the confession that more than one person helped Butch commit these murders.
Really? Wow.
It's also been suggested that Suffolk police, that they were noted for their abuse of suspects, especially at this time. They were very physically abusive and would beat a confession out of someone. And that they definitely physically assaulted Butch to get a confession.
Well, I mean, we've certainly heard stories of that before too, where they're dead set. They think you're the perpetrator, or they just want to wrap a case up and get it off the books. It's a very public case, and I'm sure the murder of an entire family was, a fairly sensational story in that area. So, I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
There was also a bloody shoe photograph that was found in police evidence that supposedly was in the Defeo house, and it was used at trial. But it doesn't match. The baseboards in the photo are completely different from the baseboards in the Defeo home.
So it's not a picture of the Defeo home.
No, but they used this photograph in trial as a piece of evidence.
Okay, well, I mean, what lawyer's not going to be like, wait a second, that's like different colored walls? I mean, how in the hell could you not tell that? That would be the first thing that would stick out to Butch or his lawyer, I would think, is that doesn't look like your home.
There are crime scene photos, and again, those investigations that were performed by Herman Race that both determined blood stains on the floor show that the victims were not killed in bed, but they were moved to the bed.
Oh, so they were killed and then put in bed.
Yes.
Their bodies laid in bed.
Which again, Herman Race points out that it would likely take 2 or 3 people to pick these bodies up and place them in bed.
Yeah, because even a small person's hard to maneuver. It's not only the weight of the body, it's awkward.
It's dead weight.
I mean.
And it's difficult.
It's just awkwardly packaged. It's not like if you had a box that weighs as much as me, it'd be easier to handle than my body. You know what I mean?
Author Rick Osuna uncovered negative strips from film of the crime scene photos, one that even depicts a seventh body, possibly,
Wow, that's
which
weird.
is further examined in Ryan Katzenbach's documentary Shattered Hopes. I wanted to look more into this bit of information. Some sources online have debunked it and are like, this isn't true, blah, blah, blah. But I'd kind of like to find that documentary and see for myself. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a copy of it. So Herman Race, along with writer Rick Osuna, concluded that Butch killed Ronnie and Louise with the help of a friend and assailant, and that Dawn killed the children, and then Butch killed Dawn. So we've got the writer who's, dived deep into all this research and whatnot, along with this private investigator, and they're kind of coming up with the same conclusion. Now, in 1974, Dawn's boyfriend signed an affidavit claiming that she had wanted to move to Florida with him, and he even released a comic song that had been written by Dawn before.
Did you say a comic song?
Yeah, like Dawn had written a song that was like a comedy kind of song.
Oh, okay.
Right?
A comedic song.
A comic song, yes, a comedic song, Dylan, a funny song.
I was like,
Think of like Adam Sandler's song.
yeah. I was like, damn, can she draw or something? She made a whole comic strip about this.
Well, it's like a comedic song.
So it's more like
a comedy song.
Adam Sandler's piece of shit car. Piece of
Sure.
shit car.
So Dawn DeFeo had written this and given it to her boyfriend, who turns it over to police. And it was called The Night the DeFeos Died. And it was all about murdering her parents.
Oh my goodness gracious, dude. Well, that's kind of weird.
Some people question whether Butch got a fair trial. The prosecutor and investigators were aware and even admitted 3 people were likely involved in the DeFeo murders, but swift justice was demanded. There was so much pressure to make an arrest and prosecute the case that certain pieces of evidence were omitted.
Well, and that's not okay because, I mean, for one, you want to make sure you go to all the killers that had a hand in this. And certainly it doesn't seem that anyone thinks Butch is completely innocent of all this. It just seems like the only question is how much part did he play in it, and was there anyone else helping him?
Now, like I said, we're going to be skipping around a little bit, but it's going to come all together here in a minute. So the Amityville Horror documentary was released in March of 2013, and it features Daniel Lutz, the son of Kathy and adopted son of George Lutz.
Okay.
Okay? He was 10 years old when his family moved into the former DeFeo house. Okay? He swears that he witnessed supernatural activity while living in the house and that it was not a hoax.
So he's saying, I can tell you for sure because I saw it with my own eyes, and I know that there was no one there playing a trick or a prank on anyone.
It is a topic which pains him to discuss. Now, I had seen this documentary some years ago, and when I decided to cover this case, I rented it from Amazon again.
Really?
And decided I was gonna rewatch. I have to say, I believe this guy. I believe that he believes something happened. Now, whether that something happened or not, who's to say? But this guy, Danny, he really believes this.
Well, I mean,
you can, watching it, I felt like he really does believe this happened to him.
well, that was a good way to say it. If someone truly believes something happened or didn't happen or whatever the case may be, then it might as well have really happened because they truly believe. You know what I mean? It will be no different for them. They really, really, truly believe that.
Something Daniel was abused and manipulated by his parents, George and Kathy, as a child, and that's why he thinks he witnessed paranormal stuff. But Daniel disagrees. He wholeheartedly believes in what he saw. He described life in the house as a fucking carnival, man. That's his quote.
Damn.
He claims that he really did see 400 to 500 flies in a room when they first moved in. That's a very famous scene in the Amityville Horror movie.
and that would scare me to death. That many flies in one place would totally weird me out. I would be so creeped out, and I wouldn't want to go anywhere near the room.
After discussing the flies in the room, he then shows the documentarian a scar on his hand from an injury when a window slammed down on his hand and bent his pinky finger.
Or narrow.
He witnessed the family dog trying to hang himself, which is also in the movie.
How does a dog do that?
Well, he's wearing a leash and like the dog jumps over this fence. It's a very strange. I can't explain it.
Wait.
Go watch the Amityville Horror movie.
I need to. Well, there's been multiple versions, obviously, but I do need to rip through all of them.
Well, there was the version in '79, and then a version came out in 2005.
And that's with Ryan Reynolds, correct?
Yeah.
All right.
I think I own that.
I think you may have it.
It's in the DVD bin.
We have a 2 for $5 DVD bin if anyone wants to come by and score some. Heather actually has a really great collection of some pretty cool movies.
I have a lot of weird indie cult films and stuff that you can't find.
It's true.
So I have them on DVD.
Those are going to be $10 a piece. They're not part of the
we
2
could
for
we
$5
could actually
giveaway.
start like the movie rental.
You know, people need to bring the movie rentals back. We'll talk about that later, though. Let's keep. So, can you remember the first time you knew of Amityville, the Amityville Horror as a kid? Like, became
Well, I
aware of it?
remember. It's funny we're talking about renting movies. I remember seeing the box, the movie box,
Right.
back when it was VHS tapes, and it was like the house with the eye windows,
Yeah.
and that weirded me out.
It was pretty scary.
And I remember asking, like, what's that about? And I think my mom was like, oh, it's about a haunted house. But that was like the extent of it. And I don't think I really learned of the true Amityville Horror phenomenon, the story, the legend, all that, probably until I was, older, like a teenager, early 20s, when I started to get more into this kind of thing.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, though, I guess, right? Yeah.
Why do you ask?
I was just curious because I don't recall ever knowing of it really when I was a kid. And I think it was about the same for me as I got older, in my mid-teens, when I could kind of...
When I was bitten by the horror bug?
Yeah. I started ripping through some really great horror movies. Man, they just don't make good horror movies anymore. Or they don't make any good movies.
I mean, they try, but they're really cheesy. Okay, so in this documentary, George Lutz is summed up as a vain, controlling man who kept his family on a leash, much like Big Ronnie. According to Daniel Lutz, George was physically and verbally abusive to the children. We do learn from Daniel Lutz in this documentary that his stepfather George was dabbling in the occult.
Damn, son, he might have woke something up.
Well, that's what Daniel thinks. George was into Satanism and sometimes performed occult rituals, according to Daniel.
Well, the danger of that is if you do something and you don't understand what you're messing with, you really could maybe upset the balance of nature and energy. Who knows?
It is suggested that George's interests initiated demonic events. George Lutz was also into transcendental meditation. And his stepson says that he veered from the mantras of TM, transcendental meditation, and was summoning demons and dark spirits through these other mantras that he really didn't understand and didn't know what he was getting into. Like he was in over his head.
Well, that's not a good move at all.
A Channel 5 news reporter named Joel Martin and Laura Didio came to know the Lutz family well. They were the ones who initially covered the haunting of the Defeo house. In the weeks and months following the Defeo murders, they were covering the story. And then when George and Kathy moved in and had their, 28 days of hell experience in this house, these reporters were on the case. They went to the Lutz's home and were trying to investigate, and they covered like the Warrens there. And so they were there in the 70s. Well, they come back and they appear in this 2013 documentary.
So they've been there.
And they remembered Daniel as a boy, and now he's an adult.
Yeah, so they've been around basically the whole time.
Yeah, so what they say happened is while they were filming inside the house, their cameraman had heart palpitations. Like he started to have heart palpitations and had to like be taken out of the house. Like he couldn't function inside the house.
Well, obviously a skeptic would say maybe that guy just had his own personal health issues.
And also, they mention a photograph that was produced by Lorraine Warren, which shows a child kind of peeking around the door. Now, some people are like, oh, well, that's one of the Defeo, or I'm sorry, that's one of the Lutz children, or that's someone else's child in this picture. But Laura Didio, the reporter, states in the documentary that while they were in the house and the Warrens were investigating and taking photos, there were no children in the house while they were there.
So it'd be impossible to have caught a picture of a kid.
Yes.
Or accidentally taken.
So this reporter is like, there's no way. While we were there were no children in the house.
When these pictures were taken.
Yes. Lorraine Warren also appears in this documentary, and she supports Daniel's notions that George's personality might have triggered something.
Well, energy is energy, and you have some hateful ass person who has bad energy. It could maybe attract something that's dark.
So, again, George and Kathy's story has been disputed by many. There are a lot of people out there who think these folks are liars. This was all a hoax. There was no haunting in the house. And one of those people is Jim Cromartie, who was the owner of the Amityville house after the Lutzes. During an August 9th, 1979 press conference, Cromartie, then owner of the house, said, quote, I was born in Amityville. I knew every family that grew up in this house, and that is a crock. The Lutzes say that every family that has been brought up in this house had bad things happen to them. It happens to be a fact that the only one family had a tragedy happen in the house. Every other family had nothing but good things come out of the house.
Yeah, that's why the one people bought the house and left 28 days later and left all their belongings, right? I mean, that's pretty extreme exit. You know what I mean? When you leave all your stuff. And I mean, my goodness, you went through all the trouble of buying a home and you just, less than a month later, you abandon it, basically.
So writer Jay Anson suggests in his book, The Amityville Horror, we're going to get back to this, that a witch named John Ketchum was responsible for the home's bad vibes.
Do you think that's a good witch name?
John Ketchum?
I'm going to catch him.
I think so.
Yeah, that's pretty decent.
Now, according to Anson, Ketchum was a witch in Salem who escaped from the witch trials. In the late 1600s, Amityville was part of Huntington Township, and historical society records located in Huntington, which is a town about 13 miles away from Amityville, did reveal that there were several John Ketchums in the area. Now, his family has disputed that he was a witch. And yeah, he's not a witch. But again, that sounds like something a witch's family would say.
You're getting him confused about John Ketchum that has a green face and rides the broom.
Now, because records of that time period are sketchy at best, there's no real clear proof that any Ketchum ever resided on or near this property. If a Ketchum resided, it was 13 miles away in this Huntington Township.
Right.
The most definitive proof against any John Ketchum being a witch came from the Ketchum family's own extensive research into their genealogy. And after careful investigation, they have been able to determine there was never a witch named John Ketchum.
What the hell? Could you imagine if you're like, damn it, I'm going to prove that old Paul Ketchum ain't no damn witch or warlock.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we're going to prove it. Because I'm sick of people talking smack about my Paul Ketchum. Whatever he is to him, his great-great-great-grandfather or whatever. But see, they wouldn't be able to disprove you're not a witch. Because you would lean into it. You would just be acting like a witch. They'd be like, see? And you do have that third nipple, so that's definitely the devil's mark.
Thanks.
You would have never survived the Salem witch trials.
Okay.
Because when they inspect you, which is basically a bunch of creepy old men seeing young girls naked and touching them all over their body, they would have found that third nipple girl. And they'd be like, see, this is where the devil suckles his juices out
See,
of
this
her.
is what happens when I just let him just go off and talk.
Oh, yeah.
Just when I let you have the mic.
Well, I was just in my mind thinking about you and how you would think it's kind of cool to be called a witch back in the day. Because, you'd be like, wow, okay, maybe I am a witch, But you might not want to be burned at the stake. But for all I know, you wanted to be burned at the stake. I don't know. I don't control you.
Well, though their story is now widely thought of as a hoax, the Lutz's so-called horror house continues to fascinate the public.
It's part of pop culture. People all around the world know of Amityville.
Oh, yeah. There are still people being, flooding the area. They've the current homeowners have actually, they petitioned to change the address of the home because they were getting a lot of looky-loos,
Well, you know
morbid tourists.
I understand people expect privacy when they buy private property, but I mean, dude, if you buy a house like this with a legend behind it, and then you're pissed when people drive by to see the house, maybe you should just bought another house. I'll be honest with you. Because I think the best kind of people that can live in a house like this are people that don't mind that. But the public, they always want to go too far. And there's that. You can't just let them come look. Next thing you know, somebody's like in your house talking about, oh, is this where people got shot?
Next thing I know, somebody's in my house like wearing my sweatpants. And I'm like, those are my sweatpants.
Those are my
They're
sweatpants.
not on my bed. Those are my pants. Now, in 2006, George Lutz, he's continued to stick by his story.
Really?
For 45 years or, for however many years the guys continued to just be like, this really happened. So as late as 2006, George told ABC News there were, quote, odors in the house that came and went. There were sounds. There were doors slamming shut in the middle of the night. I couldn't get warm in that house for many days. He claimed that he would mysteriously wake up at 3:15 nearly every morning around the same time the Defeos were murdered.
Dang, dude. That's wild. And he's never deviated from that. He insists that he had these experiences and he knows it really happened.
I mean, yeah, he sticks by it. He says at times his wife Kathy was physically transformed into an old woman and once levitated. One night he heard his children's bed slamming up and down on the floor, but claimed he couldn't do anything about it because an invisible force was paralyzing him. The family, as I mentioned, moved out. After 28 days, they abandoned their possessions, including the clothes in their closets and food in the fridge.
So they were just running for their lives, basically.
And it was 2 months later that local TV crew from Channel 5 did a segment on the house, and they brought in Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they were kind of evaluating the couple's claims. Laura Didio, the reporter, said that it was like a psychic slumber party.
Okay. I don't know that I want to go to a psychic slumber party, honestly.
Now, after all of this, we've touched on the Lutzes collaborated with Jay Anson for his best-selling book. The family claimed they never signed a contract with Anson, and at the time that they had this book and the film, that it only paid them about $300,000.
Damn.
Now, some of the folks who want to dispute the Lutzes' claims, now they paid $80,000 for this house. They had only lived in it 28 days. There have been a lot of people who say, well, they were in financial trouble, and that's why they left the home. They couldn't afford it. They were in over their heads financially. But 28 days in, you probably haven't even paid a mortgage payment on the house.
Well, no, it hasn't even come due yet. A lot of times it takes a month or two, a couple months for it to get lined up.
So when I hear people point out, well, they were just in debt and they didn't want to have to pay this, to live there. They couldn't afford it. Well, one, they had to get a mortgage on the house, so a bank combed through their financial records and seemed to think they could afford it.
Right.
Right? So that's the first. And then second, you're only living in the house 28 days.
28 days later.
28 days is hardly enough time to get yourself into such financial ruin that you let your house go into foreclosure.
And if you truly couldn't afford it and realized that, unfortunately, after you bought the house and moved in, why wouldn't you just sell it? Like, it's a big, beautiful house, interestingly built. So why wouldn't they just sell it? I mean, why would they go through all this? And if you're in financial trouble, you probably don't abandon all your possessions that you have to rebuy. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just doesn't add up for me.
Now, let's get back to this. If you remember, Butch's attorney was a guy named William Weber.
Right.
He's publicly stated that he and the Lutzes came up with the tale of this horror story over several bottles of wine.
Just like be part of in the mix. And
Well, they thought that Weber thought that they could make some money off this.
okay.
And that it might also help Butch. Because if we paint this house as it's a haunted house and there's demonic entities, we can claim that Butch was possessed when he killed his family. We'll get him out of jail. We'll make a bunch of money.
Dude, it's the old demon possession. Wait, I forgot. The old demon possession case theory. Yeah.
Weber told the TV program A Current Affair in May of 1988, quote, "We took real-life incidents and transposed them. In other words, it was a hoax."
Okay, so that I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who believe that's all this ever was. You know?
George Lutz, now he did die in 2006, but before his death, he told ABC News, he's maintained his story all along. And he told ABC it was the real deal and said, "I can just say what I experienced."
No, he was a kid when he experienced.
No, this is George. This is
No,
this is the stepdad, right?
Stepdad, okay.
Right? Now, Daniel Lutz, who was 10 at the time, he is, said, "Well, I experienced these things," but then he's blaming it on his stepdad, George, saying that George invited mysterious and dangerous forces into their lives because of the occult and George's involvement with the occult.
Damn, there's a lot going on in this family, right? I mean, dabbling in black magic, occult magic, possessions.
Now, George's other stepson, Daniel's brother, his name is Christopher Quarantino. He was 7 when he lived in the house, and he came forward in 2005 to say that the events in the Amityville Horror books and movies had been stretched to the point of fiction.
Oh, so it's just been embellished.
Right. So he's not saying it's a total fabrication. He's saying, well, they took a lot of liberties with what happened.
Took it and ran with it.
But he also agreed that his stepfather George was obsessed with the occult and had exaggerated some of the paranormal incidents he believes did occur when he was a child.
All right. Well, I mean, you've got a lot of different viewpoints on what actually happened.
Yeah, Quarantino has called his stepfather a, quote, professional showman, and said that he felt like they were being exploited.
No, that's not good.
And, the house has passed through multiple owners since the Lutzes lived there, and no one else has reported any kind of spooky, paranormal, ghostly activity.
Well, that's got to make you wonder, wouldn't you think?
Well, yeah, but if people exorcise the ghosts away.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess that's possible. Let's call exorcisms or us.
Well, it also makes me wonder. I don't know. I don't know what I believe here, but it also makes me wonder if people who are more open to the idea, like let's just say George was dabbling in the occult and that he was open to the idea of supernatural.
Right.
Then when certain things happened, he was more aware of it and or maybe did invite it because he was open to it. And other people who are non-believers and, they don't notice like the little things, the noises, the cabinet door opening.
Well, they always insist that
there's a rational explanation for it.
Right.
So they don't indulge it.
That's a good point.
Right? Because I've known a lot of people who are very skeptical about supernatural, paranormal types of stuff. And they always have an explanation for why something happens, right? And they don't want to believe it. Or they just don't have experience. They're like, I've never had an experience like that. But it makes me wonder if it's because they're closed off from experiencing it. Like they're not open to the possibility.
That very well could be.
And maybe some people are more in tune with these things.
Or
maybe it is all bullshit. I
The
don't know.
believer cherry picks things and, crams it into their narrative and discounts things that don't support the narrative. I mean, that kind of stuff happens as well. But I must say, this definitely was one of the more famous haunting cases in America, especially. And I've always wondered if it really happened, because I got to say, the first Poltergeist movie, that scared the hell out of me because I was fairly young when it came out. Yeah, totally. The whole tree crashed through the window and the creepy Doug Clown doll and the skeletons and all that shit. No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we haven't really summed up. I mean, we've talked about Jay Anson's book, but we haven't really summed up what the book says. So let's talk about the book's plot, and then we're going to wrap things up, Dylan. So I told you it's going to skip around a little bit, but it's all going to make sense at the end. So this book, written by Jay Anson, The Amityville Horror, A True Story, was published in September of 1977. Of course, it became like an instant bestseller. The book describes the house at 112 Ocean Avenue and how it had been empty for 13 months following the Defeo murders. In 1975, George and Kathy Lutz bought the house for what they felt was a bargain price. They got this house for $80,000. Again, it's a 5-bedroom house. It's this Dutch colonial style. Has this very distinctive gambrel. I think I'm saying that right. Gambrel roof. It had the swimming pool, the boathouse. It's on a channel. They got water access. It's like everything that I would want in a house, right? And during their first inspection of the house, the real estate broker told them about the Defeo murders and was like, is this something that you could live with? They discuss it. They're like, we have no problems with this. So Kathy and George, though they each had their own homes, they want a fresh start. They're newly married. They want to get a new house. So they bring along Kathy's 3 children, Daniel, Christopher, and Missy. Daniel was about 9 or 10 when they moved in. I think Christopher was 7 and Missy was around 5.
Okay, so in their eyes, they're moving into basically this beautiful, almost their dream home.
Right. And as they move in, much of the Defeo's furniture is still inside the house. It was included for an extra $400 as part of the deal.
That's somebody who didn't want to move furniture.
Now, a friend of George's knew of the murders and told the family, you should have it blessed. Now, at the time, George was a non-practicing Methodist, and he didn't really have any experience with this type of thing. Kathy was a non-practicing Catholic, and she explained the process to George. So she's like, well, I can get a priest. We'll get a priest over here. So he knew a Catholic priest, George did, named Father Ray, who agreed to carry out this blessing. In Anson's book, Real Life Priest, remember his name was Father Ralph Picario. I know.
Let's just call him Ralph.
Father P, right? He is, his name is Father Mancuso in the book for privacy reasons, but he's based on this Father P guy, right? Father
Father Precarious.
Look, I'm very Appalachian. Yeah, I can't. I don't know. I only know real simple names.
Yeah.
Mountain names.
That's right. You son bitch.
Like Smith.
Hey, you take all them syllables, you get the hell out of here, you son of a
Rathbone.
bitch.
Williams.
I don't trust a man if it's got 5 syllables in his last name. I don't trust him. And too many vowels makes me wonder too, I'll be honest.
Father Mancuso was a lawyer. He was a judge of the Catholic court and a psychotherapist who lived at the Sacred Heart Rectory. So when he arrives to perform this blessing, while George and Kathy are unpacking their belongings, this was on December 18th of 1975, he goes into the house to carry out this ritual. He flicks the first holy water and begins to pray, and that's when he hears a masculine voice demanding that he get out. When he leaves the house, he didn't mention this to George or Kathy, but he later called George and said, I would stay out of that second floor room. I heard a mysterious voice. And this was the former bedroom of Marc and John Defeo. Kathy planned on using it as a sewing room anyway, so they just went ahead and were like, okay, well, we're not going to use it as a bedroom. So again, after visiting the house, this priest allegedly developed a high fever, got blisters like stigmata on his hands. And at first, George and Kathy, they don't experience anything unusual in the house. They say, it was just living in a different house.
Right.
It was like getting
big
accustomed to
Yeah.
living in a new house. And, sure, the house settles and there's creaks and squeaks and whatever.
Demons.
But it wasn't anything. It wasn't strange. It was just the strangeness of being in a new place. Now, by mid-January, after another attempt at getting the house blessed, they experienced what would turn out to be their final night in the house. They declined to give a full account on what exactly took place. They would describe it as being too frightening. So after getting in touch with the priest, they decided to take some belongings and go stay with Kathy's mother until they had sorted out some of the problems with the house. But they claimed that the supernatural followed them there.
Oh my gosh.
And that the final scene of Anson's book describes a greenish black slime coming up the staircase towards them. And this is what happened at Kathy's mom's house.
Man, that'd really piss me off if I fled from my big, nice home I just bought to get away from this ghost or demon, and then turns out that they just follow you wherever you go. And now they're just going to hang out with you.
I mean, it's very strange, right? You've got, on one side, these people claiming they've experienced kind of a green slime oozing up the stairs, that kind of thing. But then you have a mover who goes to the home like the day after they abandon their possessions, and the mover reports experiencing no paranormal activity in the home.
Well, maybe it's just certain people that set it off. I don't know. I really can't answer this one. But there certainly was a real life family, executed and murdered. So that certainly really happened. And I think that part of the story is really terrible. Just, you have these multiple generations just gone and be killed by their own family member. So it just doesn't make sense.
Well, this is what's interesting also, Dylan. George Lutz has maintained the events were mostly true, right? And in 1979, the summer of 79, George and Kathy took a polygraph test relating to their experiences in the house. The polygraphs were administered by Chris Gugas and Michael Rice, who at the time were considered the top 5 polygraph experts in the United States.
Wow.
The results, in Rice's opinion, did not indicate lying.
So but again,
these are people who believe
if they truly believe.
If they truly believe what they experienced, then
you're not going to have the
pass it.
earmarks of lying because you feel like you're telling the truth. Well, shit, I guess we'll never know exactly what happened, but there's some interesting accounts from people who were actually there. So I guess we can just let our imagination run wild with this one, Heather.
Well, if you'd like to revisit the Amityville Horror, the 1979 film, which is based on Jay Anson's novel, features James Brolin, Hubba Hubba, and Margot Kidder. They portray George and Kathy Lutz.
And I would like to thank this episode's sponsor, Heather. Thank you again for your patronage over there at patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast, where you too can access all kinds of extra content and our Discord fam and special just for patron limited series podcasts and such. There's all kinds of stuff.
Dylan, thank you for sitting down with me to discuss the Amityville Horror case.
Thank you, Heather. I know we've been pulled in 20 directions lately, and you still somehow managed to eke out these, hour plus.
Well, hey, I mean, it's not the best episode, and there's
it's not.
a lot I could put into the story. There is a ton, but I thought, we're gonna do a little light, loose episode here. I say that, and it's almost 2 hours.
Well, you had a lot of information in there. I'd never heard a lot of it myself, so I enjoyed your story. And
okay, well, there's been a lot of material. I wanted to give my resources a little shout out here. There was an interview with George Lutz by Dan Ferrans on horror.com. the Amityville Murders reference material over at amityvillemurders.com. It's a great archive. It's got a lot of pictures of the family, that kind of thing. Very great source of information as far as the Amityville murder. The Real Amityville Horror, the tragic murder of Ronald Defeo's family at Crime Library, another resource I used. Tons of newspaper articles. There's a lot out there. The Rick Osuna book.
So if our listeners want to follow up and dig into more Amityville horror info, there's plenty to find, is what you're telling us.
Yeah. Hans Holzer, another famous paranormal investigator.
Hans Holzer?
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like a porn name.
He wrote the Amityville Curse, Fact or Fiction. Interesting resource. And then there is a book by Roxanne Salch and Stephen Kaplan called The Amityville Horror Conspiracy. And then Rick Osuna's The Night the DeFeos Died.
Damn. Well, thank you very much for your story. And we're going to keep rocking and try to get more content out directly behind this one. And we're so happy to be back talking to the listeners.
Okay, Dylan. Well, I appreciate you sitting down talking with me today. I think we should further discuss our theories on Amityville.
I agree. And I think I'm going to put you to bed.
Please, I'm tired.
Oh,
Okay,
look at it.
Bye, listeners.
Bye.
Yay.
Hi, I'm Ashley, a true crime fanatic.
I'm Dan, and I don't know anything about true crime.
Together, we host Fuck That, a true crime podcast that covers cases that highlight important topics that are often overlooked, such as wrongful convictions, domestic violence, and social inequities, sprinkled in with the occasional case with spooky themes. If you are looking for your next true crime fix delivered candidly with a hint of sarcasm, you can listen and subscribe to bi-weekly episodes of Fuck That wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook and Twitter at @FThatPod and at @FThat_pod on Instagram.